You're listening to the Platform Launchers podcast. I'm John Stange, and it's great to be with you this week, as always, because I love talking about building, growing, and monetizing our online platforms. We get to do this together. We take our passions, turn them into a platform, and earn a paycheck from doing that. And every now and then, we have the opportunity to invite a guest expert to share their expertise and their wisdom and their counsel and their guidance. And this week, we have a guest expert that if you've been paying attention to this podcast for any length of time, you've probably noticed that this is somebody whose name has come up. We've actually interviewed her. If you just go back, I don't know, a little ways, you'll find another interview that we did with her where she had just kind of a mega fantastic, wonderful day in business. In fact, I'll just kind of tip you off. She earned $84,000 when she started her life coaching business, and she earned that in a single day. And we're wondering, all right, Colleen, how did you go about doing this? How did this come to pass? And it turns out that Colleen Law, who is our guest expert this week, is an expert at making connections. Inside Platform Launchers here, we're always asking her things about this. She's always giving us counsel and wisdom on how she's making connections with other people. So I told Colleen before our interview started here, if you're watching us on YouTube or if you're just listening to us via the podcast, excuse me, I have a list of 20 questions that I'm ready to ask Colleen. But Colleen, I don't know if we'll get through all 20 of these. But first off, let me just say this. Welcome to the Platform Launchers podcast. So grateful to have you with us.
Thank you. I'm grateful to be here.
Well, Colleen, you are indeed someone that many of us look to as an expert in a variety of areas, but one of the experts is this idea of making connections. So let me just start broad, and then we'll get into the specifics of how to apply this concept to just our businesses, our online platforms, all of that. But I wonder for you, when did you, maybe I could start off this way. When did you notice that this was something that you were particularly good at, this idea of making good connections with people? And when did that, like, does it tie to something in your life, in your background? Is it just a personality thing? Fill us in a little bit on the background before we get to the nitty gritty of the business specifics.
Sure. Well, actually, it's not something I realized. It was something I intentionally went after. Okay.
Okay.
So between mentoring from Dan Miller and Justin Janowski and then yourself, I
Mhm.
have learned different ways to intentionally go after seeking connections and making them last, making them into real connections.
Excellent. So you somewhere along the way you decided, all right, I'm going to be super intentional about this. I'm just going to do it, and you started, I guess, observing and tapping into the brains of other people that you saw doing this sort of thing, and you said, there's got to be a path here for me that I can use in my own business and in my own life.
That's correct. That's correct.
Is there something about your personality that you've noticed that really just ties into the desire to make authentic connection with other people?
Well, I love to speak with people. I love to learn about people,
Hmm.
what they do, what their background is. You know, I've always loved to meet people from all over the world and just learn about their countries and about them and their families and everything. And I think that ties back to my growing up. I mean, I grew up when my dad was in graduate school and he was part of a chemistry group. He's a chemical engineer. And I don't know if you know, but when you're in a graduate school in sciences, you're usually a part of a group of people. So there's usually a head professor and about 10 or 15 other students under that professor, and you're all working together. Well, my dad had that kind of a group, and it was filled with people from all over the world. And I grew up with that, and it was great.
That sounds extremely inspiring and beneficial from a foundational standpoint. The kind of influence that that could have on somebody as you're observing your father engaging with people from all over the place. And then that becomes something that's almost just part of your wiring because that's what was modeled for you during those early years, which is pretty cool. I love that. So this is what I thought would be practical because I know many of the people listening to this show, they are building all kinds of businesses. They're doing all sorts of online platforms, online businesses, message-based online platforms, things that are meant to serve other people and meant to connect with people in a variety of ways. And so let's start off with a view of your businesses. What you have several going on at one time. So let's let people know what you do from the business standpoint, and then we're going to talk about how you build the connections with the people that you're looking to serve.
All right. Well, let's do this alphabetically. I have a business called ABD Coaching Solutions, where I help both dissertation candidates and master's candidates who have been away from their school but have come back to finish both their thesis and their dissertation. And I help them do it in 1 year.
Nice.
Okay. So
Okay.
it saves them a great deal of money.
Yeah, which I'm sure
Okay.
everybody appreciates.
Yes. So that is the first business. The second business is called Custom Brick Houses. And I build houses and other things from Lego bricks and pieces and parts. So, and I,
Which which is, by the way, like one of the coolest things I think anyone in our group in platform launchers is involved in. Whenever you talk about this, I think they don't directly correlate in my mind, but yet it makes perfect sense because I think people who are just, I don't know, entrepreneurial people they can't keep themselves from being involved in multiple things, even if those things seem totally different. And that's how your story strikes me.
yes, I love it. It's a great balance for me. I mean, it's head and hands,
Hmm.
you know, and the heart is just part of both of them. So,
Love it. And who do you serve with those custom brick houses?
well, right now it's primarily real estate agencies and then individuals who have houses that they currently live in, they want miniatures of, or their dream home. I've got one gentleman who wants me to build a Lego mansion for his custom cars that he builds, you know. So, it's basically anyone.
And just for fun, I hope you don't mind me asking this question, but since you've shared it with the group, we've got to share it here in the podcast. What could someone expect to earn doing something like that with these custom brick houses? Lest people think this is just some sort of little hobby.
It varies because we build different sizes and different types of houses. The biggest one I've ever built with that was both a size and a type of a house earned me $164,000.
So we're not talking just some small little thing. We're $164,000. That's quite the project here.
It is. It took 8 months,
Oh
including
boy.
the research because it was a saloon, and there are no saloons nowadays other than saloons that were made into tourist tracks,
Hmm.
attractions, and they're nothing like they were back in the day, and that's what the gentleman wanted. So I had to watch old movies and TV shows and all sorts of stuff. So it was a lot of fun, but it was just a lot of work.
That's fascinating. So all right, so very cool. So now, as you're doing as you're building these Lego houses, these custom brick houses, as you're offering your coaching, obviously there needs to in each of these you need to have someone that you're serving. So there are people that you're serving. And I want to know, for starters, as you build up to this, as you're building an audience, as you're connecting with people, how do you build trust with someone you've just met?
You have an authentic conversation. You know, you say something like, you know, what's the biggest issue you have in your business? Is there anything I can help you with? Many times I offer to pray with people. It's just getting to know them. One gentleman had, you know, he trusted me within 10 minutes and he had so many problems going on. And I just listened and then prayed for him,
Love it.
and he was in tears at the
Mhm.
end, but now it's like we're friends.
Where are you finding these people that you're connecting with to begin with?
Both in groups that I'm in and people who respond to my Facebook posts.
Okay. Could you elaborate on both of those? Because I know that a lot of people that are listening here are looking for tactics, right? We're looking for practical things. So joining groups and responding to Facebook posts, right? So
Right.
tell us a little bit more about the value of groups, the type of groups that you join, things like that.
Well, first of all, obviously platform launchers. I'm
Hmm.
also a member of the Christian Coaches Academy, which is a
Hmm.
Justin Janowski group, and I'm a
Hmm.
member of three entrepreneurial groups on Facebook,
Okay.
and they're huge groups from around the world. And a lot of people will ask, you know, is, is there anyone out there who is good at mindset or who wants to talk about mindset or anyone who has who knows something about abuse or whatever,
Hmm.
and you respond to them. And what I do is I say, yes, I'll go on your podcast, but can we have a coffee chat first? Okay.
Nice.
And that coffee chat is so we get to know each other.
Is that typically something you just do over Zoom or something like that?
Yes. Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's 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 a Zoom or Teams or any other conference platform. But I love having coffee chats. They're usually anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. I've had a
Okay.
couple 2-hour ones, you know. Um,
Which
and it's
tells me you just in general like people
I
because
do.
you're not charging something for that. You're just saying,
Yeah.
let me just genuinely take time to connect with you. And you used a big word earlier, not big in length, but big in concept. You said you try to be active in listening.
Yes.
Mhm. Okay, so you're building rapport. You're intentionally. It sounds to me, and if I get any of this wrong, correct me. But it sounds to me like you're starting off by saying, "All right, let me go where the people are." So you're joining these groups. Some of these groups that you're actively participating in. You're also joining groups on social media and things like that, and you're interacting with the groups that you join and offering yourself as a listening ear.
That's exactly it. That's
Okay.
exactly it.
Now, all right. So there are two areas where your business is focusing. And one is obviously providing coaching for those that are trying to finish their dissertations. The other is something totally unrelated. You said the custom brick houses. I wonder, how did you develop your personal, I guess we could say like brand authority in each of those areas? So let's start with the coaching one for starters. When and how did you become an authority on dissertation coaching? How did that process come about?
Well, it actually came about as a result of my own history. When I was getting my doctorate, I had to separate from my school because I experienced a tragedy in my life and I was away from my school for 10 years.
Mm,
And I came back to the school and had to work very hard. But once I had decided to come back to school, I did my dissertation and I did it in 1 year. And I developed all of these different processes and tactics and automations that allowed me to continually move forward regardless of what was happening outside of my dissertation sphere. Okay.
and and oh yeah, sorry. Continue your thought. Go ahead.
So that's what started it. And then people started asking me from that school, well, how did you do it in a year? Because I'm on my fourth year and I just can't get going. So people started asking me, and I decided, you know what? If people are asking, provide it.
Nice. That was going to be my follow up. I wondered, did people start as they saw your success with this? That became where your authority was coming from. You actually did it. And then people wanted to know, how did she do this?
Exactly.
And then was it word of mouth from there where people would personally succeed with your help and then they would start spreading it via word of mouth? Or is it a combination of other things?
Well, it actually is word of mouth. I actually, when I developed the business, contacted retention officers at universities to let them know what I was doing. And I gave discounts as to, if you send someone to me, I will charge them half of what I normally charge, you know, just to get started. And when the retention officers saw that these students who were not normally going to graduate actually finish and graduate, the word of mouth started from the retention officers and then from the students themselves. And so it's just kept growing and growing and growing.
I could totally so I also teach at a local university, and I know one of the big words that they're always using is this idea of retention. It's one of the buzzwords right now, and I'm assuming in academia that everybody all around the way is focusing on that. But I could totally see that becoming something where somebody would recommend you and your services after that track record got established. They watched you help people. They watched you help people succeed. And all of a sudden you've got now a pipeline. So you reached out to these retention officers. What were those initial conversations with them like?
Very awkward. I was basically cold calling people.
Hmm.
And I remember my third call, the gentleman that I spoke with said, "This is your first time, isn't it?" And I was like, "Yes." You know, but then, after the 10th or 11th, you start developing a process. And I actually started using LinkedIn to help me. And so I would find out some information about the retention officers so that we could have something to talk about other than my business and their business.
Nice.
Something that hooked them in. So one gentleman was a Notre Dame football fan. And at that time, Notre Dame had this wild winning streak.
Hmm.
And so when I spoke with him, I said, "Are you on top of the world with what Notre Dame is doing?" And for 45 minutes, the first 45 minutes of the call, that's all we talked about, you know. But we became closer in that conversation. And so the second half of the conversation, which was about my business, became a lot easier.
Excellent. So you basically had to get to a spot where you were willing to make those cold calls, where you were willing to actually talk to people you didn't know and get through the initial jitters of doing that. But then over time, you got good at it.
Got very good at it. And one of my friends had actually asked me and challenged me really to respond to no's differently. And so one year, I went after 100 no's in a row.
Mhm.
And after that, no doesn't bother me. It just means not yet.
Right. Right. It just means not yet. That's fun to make a game of it too, isn't it? Where you
It
feel like
is.
you're winning something if you get a no instead of feeling like you're losing something.
Exactly. That's exactly what it became.
So some of these retention officers and others that you've worked with have become repeat clients, it sounds like.
Definitely, definitely. In fact, almost all of them are repeat clients.
All right. Well, then, if you're working in a context where you have repeat clients and you're doing this over a period of time, I imagine that there are some strategies that you now use. So, initially, the strategy was to connect with these people, but now that you're connected with them and you've served them in a variety of capacities, now they become long term clients. So, I wonder what strategies do you use to maintain long term relationships with some of these people?
Well, first, I have a blog now that I do every week. It's now on Facebook because my website got hacked and we're trying to rebuild.
Okay.
Okay, but I will actually put together a month's worth of blogs and send it to them. Especially if I know they're particularly interested in something. Like one of them was particularly interested in the disc,
Okay.
and I had written a couple of blogs on the disc assessment, and so
Okay.
I sent that to her, and she really enjoyed it, and she came back to me with questions, and I'm disc certified, so I was able to answer them.
Hmm.
You know, I also have a book that I have written. It's not published yet, but I have given out chapters of the book to these retention officers to help their students. And then also every once in a while, if a special holiday or something, remember Secretary's Day or whatever, I'll send a
Hmm.
little gift.
Oh, okay. That's very generous of you, very intentional of you.
Mm.
So you basically go out of your way to maintain these relationships. Once they get started, once your foot's in the door, you're trying to be very purposeful. You're not just assuming that these relationships will remain as they are. You're being intentional about it.
Very intentional. Most of them like when I send them cards, and I've learned what when their birthdays are, when their kids' birthdays are, that kind of thing. And I just
Smart.
wish them a happy birthday or whatever. Just every few months, it's usually once a quarter, you know, I go ahead and I send out cards. I have a whole stack of cards of various types, like Christmas cards now. I've been sending out Christmas cards since November 1st, I think,
Okay.
because there's so many of them.
Hmm.
So,
Excellent. So let me take this in a slightly adjusted direction. But some of this that you're doing, some of these connections that you're making, are with people that, it's primarily like a professional setting that they would be operating in. And so I wonder, when you're trying to network with a group of people in a professional setting, is there a way that you would say this is kind of my most effective approach to general networking in a professional setting?
well, actually, it's in all settings. I use the same approach, just being authentic and being me. Because in my past, I've tried to be other things and it just doesn't work.
Hmm.
you know. So, I'm one of those people that like to talk with my hands. I do it in a professional setting. I do it in a non-professional setting. You know, um, I smile and laugh and nod my head and all that kind of stuff. It's just who I am,
Hmm.
and I react to what they're saying, and they like that.
And back in the day, networking, I mean, all of it was done in person basically is kind of how that all went. And so that's useful in a context like that, but it's also useful in this digital era that we live in, because now we're living in an era where technology is the conference, right? It used to be you had to go to a conference, go to some sort of an event. So I'm curious, with that same kind of question in mind, how has technology like social media or virtual meetings, you were talking about Zoom, you were talking about Teams, different things like that, how has that changed the way that you either form or maintain these connections?
It's actually made it easier to both form and maintain connections. Okay, as far as forming connections, I can reach out to people across the world. Okay. And I actually reached out to some people I knew from a previous part of my life across the world. And I've actually had students come to me through those people for my coaching. And that's been great. A lot having social media. I mean, I just get on, I send them a message. Hey, can we have a coffee chat?
Nice.
Just 45 minutes, and I ask them how it's going for them and what's going on and that kind of thing. And usually they will tell me, well, I've got, this person is a professor at Cambridge University. So he's like, I've just got this student and who just can't seem to finish their thesis, you know, and because over there, the dissertation is called a thesis. Um, I said, well, I can help with that, and they say, well, how? And I give them specific steps I would take once I have them tell me, okay, tell me a little bit about the student.
Nice.
What are their specific challenges?
Would you say that in this era that online connections can be as just as meaningful as in-person connections?
Oh, definitely. When I talk to people, in fact, I was just talking to my mother this morning, and I told her I have more friends online that I have never met in person than I have in-person friends. And there are people that I've known online for 10 years,
Hmm.
you know.
Just through being intentional to make these connections through groups, through different things like that.
Exactly.
What are there any lessons that you've learned through connections that didn't work out? Because I'm assuming there, you said before that you challenged yourself to hear a no 100 times, right? Or
Mhm.
to be told no or turned down 100 times. And I wonder what sort of lessons do you learn or have you learned from some of these connections that really didn't work out the way that you were hoping they would?
Well, I basically learned how to ask good questions. If you ask good questions, a no is never going to come out. Okay. It's always going to be, let me think about this.
Hmm.
And then they will get back to you. Or you can email them and say, hey, you were thinking about this. I was wondering what you were thinking. Are there any questions I can answer? That kind of thing. Um, but yeah, learning to ask more insightful questions, learning to ask questions. As many times I would just sit and listen and say, yes, 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 okay, and not ask a question. You've got to ask questions because it tells them you're listening. Okay. Um, Also, just start. You may be nervous. I found there are usually several things that stop people from making connections.
Hmm.
And the basic thing is you just have to start. It can be awkward. I told you about the third person I talked to when I was cold calling them. Okay, that
And
was
they
very
actually just
awkward.
called you out and said, "You're new at this, aren't you?"
Yeah, but he referred me to someone, and I've had several referrals from him.
Excellent.
you know. So it just start. It can be awkward, it can be silly, but don't make the whole call, don't even make the intention of the call to be a sales call. The intention is let me get to know you.
Hmm. That's good counsel. I think people could sniff that out if someone's just connecting for the purpose of making a sale. That's off-putting.
Hmm.
I know when people do that to me, I don't like it very much. Where I feel like, all right, the only reason that you're even bothering to connect with me in any way is because you're trying to get something from me, as opposed to be a benefit to me. And after a while, that feels a bit draining. So I think people can sniff that out. So I like that counsel, the idea that you're legitimately trying to listen. You're legitimately trying to get to know people, and if it's a good fit, then obviously you have the opportunity to serve that person or work together or whatever it may be. But if it's not, you'll be able to figure that out as well. I have a couple quick questions for you as we kind of wrap this up. This goes so quick, Colleen.
I
It's just
know.
goes so quickly. But I want to ask two more things before we wrap it up. The first one is this: someone's listening to us right now. Let's say they're new in building their online platform. They just started adding some services, whatever their services may be. So maybe it's coaching services, maybe it's some other kind of service. What do you suppose a good piece of advice that you could give to that person just starting out? Now, you did tell them, just start. I did hear you say that. But is there anything else that you would like to give to that person who's looking to expand their network, but they're kind of new to this?
Really, just to talk to people, be authentic and genuine, because what happens when you do that is not only do they become interested in you, but you actually can better identify your own niche,
By
okay,
doing that very thing.
by doing that very thing,
Okay.
you know, um, and just sort of let the coffee chats go where they go, but always make a coffee chat. You always have time, even if it's just 15 minutes,
Right.
always have time for that. A coffee chat can be over lunch, it could be at the end of the day, it could be in the morning, whenever, you know, just make sure you go and do a coffee chat and you ask questions and you're authentic.
Excellent. I like that idea of just setting out time to just meet with people and talk with people and kind of work through these things and see if it would be a good fit and build that connection that way. Kind of a fun question that I want to finish up our conversation with. And that's it. If you could connect with anyone, either living or historical, who would that be and why?
Oh, wow. Historically, Abraham Lincoln.
Okay, and why so?
because I think he was a very thoughtful, authentic person
Hmm.
who had values and he tried to live those values. Okay. And when he made a mistake, he said, I've made a mistake.
Hmm.
You know, um, yeah, Abraham Lincoln.
Awesome. Do you ever read the book Lincoln on Leadership?
No, actually, I have it. I bought it about 2 weeks ago because I
Did
have
you
a
really?
lot of
You
biographies. Yeah,
just got it?
I just haven't read it yet.
That is a great book. What's the man's name that wrote it? Donald something? I forget. I'd have to check. But the
I
book
have,
is I've read that book, and Lincoln on Leadership. Love it. Love that book. Great example of a leader. Good historical option to make that connection with. So speaking of connection, Colleen, thank you so much for being a guest here. And there are so many more things that I know could be said about this idea of making connections. We're just kind of scratching the surface. But I wonder if somebody is listening to us right now and would like to make a connection with you, either to just learn more about the process of making connections, or because some of the services that you offer are exactly the right fit for what they do, what's the best way for someone to reach out to you?
well, at the moment, because my website was hacked, I'm using a personal email.
Okay.
That's EVIE 19702 at gmail.com.
All right. And give that to us one more time.
EVIE 19702 at gmail.com.
All right. If you get the opportunity to connect with Colleen Law, you just heard her personal email shared here. Bad timing, your website getting hacked right before we do the interview here, but at the same time, we got to have backup plans. And so connect with Colleen Law at the email that she just shared with us. Colleen, it was super fun to have you as a guest this week. For Platform Launchers, you were a fantastic guest expert.
Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun.
And those of you that are listening, we'd also invite you to stop by platformlaunchers.com. We got a variety of things that'll help you build, grow, and monetize your online platform there on the website. But that's it for us this week. Hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll catch up with you again right here next time. Take care.